The story I have today for you is called The Barber's Wife, and it is a folk tale from the Punjab. Now, usually when I research a folk tale, it will tell me the cultural origin of that story, and you based on the location in the story, I can tell whether that story is taking place in what is now Pakistan or what is now India. But interestingly, all that I could get from this story was that it is set in Punjab. Now, I think most of you on today know that Punjab is a province in Pakistan, current Pakistan, but it is also a state across the border into India. And the earliest written record that I could find of this story is from 1894. So that is like more than 50 years before partition. And that is why I stuck with just saying that this story is from Punjab. So having said that, let's start and just sit back and enjoy the story. So once upon a time in Punjab, in a small village, there was a barber, but he wasn't really very good at what he did. If a person came in to get a shave, they would leave with some nicks and scrapes on their chin. Or if they came in to get a haircut, they would definitely have some clips on their ears. So he was very poor. And not having any other skills, it wasn't like he could do anything else. And his wife, Hoshiara, was a little fed up of this because they would not have enough to eat some days and would go to bed without any food. So one day they get a message and they hear that the king is having this big celebration at the palace in honor of his new son. So Hoshiara tells the barber, her husband, that go to the palace and the king is going to be in such a good mood. Present your case to him and maybe he'll be generous, in a generous mood, and will give you something. So the barber, not having any other better idea, decides to follow what his wife said and goes to the palace. And sure enough, the king is in a very generous mood that day and calls upon the barber. And the barber tells him his predicament. And the king, being in a very generous mood, says, well, what would you like? And the barber says, well, something. And the king says, well, how about I give you a piece of land? However, that land hasn't been farmed in very, very many years and is a barren. And the barber is just so relieved that he didn't have to come up with an idea, that he willingly takes the piece of barren land. And as he's walking home with this news, he wonders what his wife, Hoshiara, is going to say about this. But then he thinks, well, she told me to bring something, and a piece of land, even though it's barren, is better than nothing. It is something. So when he gets home, she asks him, well, did the king give you something? And he says, absolutely. And she says, well, quickly give it to me so I can go to the market and buy us some bread and some food. And the barber says, well, it's not really that kind of something. He gave us a piece of land but it's barren. And Hoshiara says, you've got to be kidding me. What are we going to do with barren land? I mean, we're not rich enough to buy oxen or plow. How are we going to plow this? And very disappointed, once again, they go to sleep hungry one more night. But Hoshiara, as her name suggests, because in Punjabi that means very clever, she comes up with an idea. And then that next morning, when she wakes up, she tells her husband that in the evening, we are going to the land that the king gave us. And every time I say to you, "Oh, dear husband, I'm really tired. Can we go home? I need you to stay just a little bit longer." And the barber knew better not to argue with his wife, because he knew that it was more than once that she had lived up to her name, Hoshiara, which means intelligent. So that afternoon, they walk over to the piece of land, and they walk around the piece of land, looking down as if they're looking for something. And any time a person passes by, Hoshiara says, "Oh, dear husband, can we please stop? I'm really tired. Can we go home?" And like his wife had instructed, he says, "Just a little longer." And this goes on for the rest of the evening. Then there are a bunch of thieves behind a bush, and they've been watching Hoshiara and her husband all evening. And finally, the leader of the thieves decides to go up and find out what's going on. And Hoshiara, seeing him from the corner of her eye coming towards her, says, "Oh, dear husband, I am so tired. Can we please go home?" And the husband, as instructed, says, "Oh, just a little bit longer." So the leader of the thieves comes up to Hoshiara and says, uh, "Ma'am, what is going on? Is there anything I can help you with?" And Hoshiara says, "Well, I really shouldn't tell anybody, but you look like somebody that can be trusted. So I'll tell you our secret. This land was left to me by my grandfather, and in this land he buried a pot of gold, and we are looking for that pot of gold." And the man says, the leader of the thieves says, "Don't worry, ma'am, I will not tell your secret to anyone." And at that, he goes back to his band of thieves who are still hiding behind the bush. And the sun starts to set and it starts to get dark. Hoshiara and her husband go back to their house. And as soon as it gets dark, the thieves come out and start digging up on the land looking for the pot of gold. And they dig all night. And now the sun is about to rise, and they are tired and disappointed because they have not found the pot of gold. And now that the sun is coming out, they have to go back into hiding. So very disappointed, they leave. The next morning, when Hoshiara and her husband come back to the land, they see that it without any oxen or plow, the land has been turned over. And Hoshiara goes to the market and asks the storekeeper to lend her a bag of rice, and promises to return that bag of rice 3 times over. And because she had lived up to her name many times before, the storekeeper knows that she would keep her promise and lends her a bag of rice. Hoshiara comes back and, working very hard, plants that rice, and then that harvest that year, true to her word, there is such a bumper crop. There is enough for her to return the bag of rice 3 times over to the storekeeper who had lent her the bag of rice, to keep one bag, and also to sell the rest to buy a bag of gold. When the thieves return to that village the next time and hear about Hoshiara and her husband's fortune, they go to her door very upset. And the leader knocks on the door, and when Hoshiara opens the door, he says, "Well, we plowed the land. We worked really hard. So half of that gold belongs to us." And she says, "Well, I told you that there's a pot of gold. I didn't tell you to dig for it." And with that, she closes the door. The thieves are so angry. They decide that they are going to get their hands on that bag of gold. And Hoshiara knows as well that they will come back for that gold. So that night, the leader of the thieves sends one thief to the house to go find that bag of gold. And when he gets there, he makes so much noise, clattering and clattering, looking for that bag of gold, that the barber wakes up. hearing the sounds, and he says, I think those that there are the thieves. He whispers to Hoshiara, have you hidden the gold? And Hoshiara whispers very loudly, hoping that the thief will hear her, and says, yes, yes, I've hidden it in a bin in the kitchen. It is under all the bread and all the sweets that I made. The thief thinks, I have found out where the gold is. He runs to the kitchen, finds the bin, and carries it out and back into the forest where the band of thieves with their leader is waiting. And when they open the tin, the aroma of the cardamom and nutmeg and cinnamon overtakes them, and they get to eating the bread and the cookies and the sweets till they get to the bottom of the tin, and there is no gold. But what they didn't know, that along with the cinnamon and the sweet smelling nutmeg and the cardamom, Hoshiara had also mixed something else in the cookies and the bread and the sweets that makes them very, very sick. So the next few days they spend recovering over their sickness. And Hoshiara knows that this is not the end of the thieves, that she is going to hear from them again. And sure enough, they are so upset at being tricked by Hoshiara twice now that they return to the house. And again, the leader of the thieves sends not one, but two thieves this time, because he wants to make sure that the thief is not alone and doesn't get tricked by Hoshiara. But they make so much clatter and noise that the barber and Hoshiara wake up. And the barber again says to Hoshiara, whispers, I think the thieves are back. Have you hidden the gold? And she says, again, in a whisper, loud enough, hoping that the thieves will hear her, says, yes, yes, husband, don't worry. This time I've hidden the gold up in the highest branch of the neem tree where nobody will be able to get to it. Hearing this, the two thieves are so excited. They run back to the fires and tell the rest of the thieves and the leader that Hoshiara has hidden the gold in the top of the neem tree in the garden. So they go to the neem tree, and the leader sends up one of the thieves to retrieve the bag of gold from the highest branch on the neem tree. And the thief climbs up and sits down on the branch, and just about when he's going to reach over for what he thinks is the bag of gold, a hornet comes and stings him. And he hits his arm where the hornet has bit him. And the thieves below think he is stealing and hiding pieces of gold in his pocket. And they yell out to him, isn't there any honor among thieves? And the leader sends up another of the thieves to retrieve the gold. And sure enough, when the second man also reaches for what he thinks is the bag of gold, another hornet bites him. And he hits his leg, where the hornet has bit him. And the thieves at the bottom of the tree says, I tell you, there is no honor among thieves. And the leader sends another thief up there to grab the bag of gold. And this time, the thief is successful in grabbing what he thinks is the bag of gold, but is actually a hornet's nest. And with the weight of three of the men sitting on the branch breaks and they come tumbling down on the rest of the thieves, and with the hornets biting and stinging them all over. It takes them weeks to recover from the welts and broken bones and swollen ankles. But now they are determined more than ever to get their revenge on Hoshiara, because it has been 3 times now that she has tricked them. By this time, Hoshiara thinks that she and her husband are safe from the thieves. But it is getting summertime and it is getting hot. So she leaves her window open when they go to bed, hoping for some breeze to help them sleep. And that is when she hears the thieves making a plan to break into the house to steal the gold. So she quickly wakes up, runs to the kitchen, grabs the sharpest knife she can find, and hides behind the door. And one of the thieves is sent by the leader to go into the house and find the gold. But as soon as he opens the door and peeks through, Hoshiara snips off the tip of his nose. And he goes running out, holding his nose, bleeding, saying, I think there was a glass door there. It was really sharp and I ran into it, but I think I broke the glass, but I've hurt my nose. The leader of the thieves says, fine. And he sends another man to go into the house. And as soon as he enters the door, Hoshiar again swings her knife and cuts off the tip of his nose. And he goes running back and says, I think the glass was broken, but there was something made of steel there. I think it was the shutters that was behind the door, and I couldn't get through, but I hurt my nose. And in this way, the leader keeps sending one man after the other who keeps returning with their tip of their nose cut off. Finally, the leader says, I'm not going to go through that door because all of you are wounded. Who's going to take care of you if I get wounded as well? And they go away tending to their cut off tips of their nose and the wounds on their face. But this is not the end of it. This is making them even more angry. And now they're not interested in the gold anymore because Hoshiara has tricked them 4 times. Now they just want revenge. But Hoshiara thinks that this is the end of it. The thieves are not going to return. And it's getting hotter and hotter. So it's now so hot during the summer that Hoshiara and the barber have laid out their cots outside in the garden, hoping for some summer breeze to cool them while they sleep. When the thieves, now having recovered from their clipped off noses, come back and they see Hoshiara sleeping outside in the garden on her cot, they decide to kidnap her. And they pick up the cot and they bring it over into the forest. And they set it down and they start arguing about what they're going to do. Are they going to kill her? Are they going to hold her for ransom? What are they doing? What are they going to do? But they can't come to a consensus. And hearing this argument, Hoshiara wakes up and she quickly stuffs her pillow under the blanket so the thieves would still think she's on the cot. And as soon as she can, she climbs up on top of the tree. The thieves decide that, okay, it is late. We are not going to come up with an idea right now of what we're going to do with her. So let's just go to sleep and we'll make a decision in the morning. But they know that she's a very clever woman, so somebody has to keep guard over her. And the leader of the thieves says, you guys have all been useless. So you go to sleep, I am going to keep watch over her. So the other thieves go to sleep, excuse me. And the leader is watching over her, or what he thinks is Hoshiara, but it's actually a pillow. And now up in the tree, Hoshiara has finally come up with an idea. And she covers her face with her veil and in her sweetest voice starts singing. When the leader of the thief hears this, he thinks it's some magical creature in the tree. And he wonders if her voice is so sweet, how sweet she would be. And he calls out to her and says, oh, beautiful, sweet creature with such a beautiful, sweet voice, won't you come down? And Hoshiara pretends to ignore him and continues to sing in her sweet, 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 sweet voice. And the leader of the thieves decides that, I think she's being shy. I'll just go up to her. So he climbs up the tree and sits by her on the branch of the tree. And he says, oh, sweet creature, you have won the heart of the king of thieves. Won't you show me your beautiful face? And Hoshiara, in her sweet voice, says, "Oh, I don't know if I can trust you and what you say, King of Thieves." And he says, "Well, what can I do to make you trust me?" And she says, "Well, maybe if I can see the truth on your tongue, then maybe I would believe you." And so entranced by her beautiful voice, the king of thieves, the leader, closes his eyes and sticks out his tongue. And Hoshiara, taking that opportunity, bites his tongue, and screaming and yelling, he falls off the tree. And waking up the other thieves, and knowing that they have been tricked by Hoshiara again, they run out of the forest. Hoshiara climbs down the tree, puts her cart on top of her head, and walks back home. This is too much for the thieves and the leader. They have never been tricked like this before. And so they decide that it is time for justice. And the only place they would find justice is to go to the king. So they go to the king and tell them their side of the story, pretending to be victims, and that Hoshiara was actually the perpetrator. So the king calls for Hoshiara, and Hoshiara appears at the court, and she tells the king the story, her story, and explains how everything she did was in self-defense to protect her home, her husband, and herself. And the king is so amazed at her courage and bravery and how smart she was and to trick these thieves. He throws them all into prison. And Hoshiara goes back to her house and lives peacefully for the rest of her life with her husband and with the wealth she has gained through her smarts. And the people all around the village and the neighboring villages hear about Hoshiara and how clever she is, and they come to her for advice. And for the rest of her life, she, in a very prudent and humble way, advises the people of her village and all the people of the neighboring village.